Hello and welcome back to Arsenal Domination. And it's a day after Arsenal have beaten Crystal Palace in the League Cup to go through to the semi-final. And it was a much needed win, as I said last night. Arsenal had to put aside the disappointment of the last two Premier League games, and they will need to put it right again at the weekend against Palace again, funny enough, in the league, because they can't afford any more slip-ups. But this was as I said last night, a really promising performed from an attacking sense. We scored three from open play. We created more chance and played with a lot higher tempo in that second half in particular. And all the while we did it whilst resting a few players. It was just what Arsenal needed. Defensively looked a bit shambolic at times. I think that's probably to be expected with the makeshift nature of that back four. I think Saliba and Gabriel will come in to start the weekend. It'll be one of Partey or Timber at right back, and with I assume Miles Lewis Skelly back in at left back. Um, But we will see what happens at the weekend. But as I say, psychologically an important victory last night, and they're into the semi-finals of a cup competition. It might be the least important of the four, but it's still a semi-final, and Arsenal, need silverware this season. That's without question. Mikel Arteta has done a very good job with this squad, but he has to win silverware this season, and this is an opportunity for that, and that's why it was important. But what I do want to do is talk about three of the players that played last night. Um, and what their futures at Arsenal are. The first one is the man of the match last night, Gabriel Jesus. One goal this season coming into the night. Hasn't really scored since January for us, and he's supposed to be our striker. He's supposed to be the man that can get us 10 to 15 goals this season as a backup number two. Well, as a result of last night, he goes from 1 to 4. He was excellent. He looked sharp. He looked hungry, and he took his goals really, really well. He had a lot of time to sort of think about it. And I think when you're struggling for form, quite often you can overthink it, worry about it, and go, "What if I miss?" He seemed calm and focused, and he sort of three past Dean Henderson, who had a really good game last night for Palace. To be honest with you, and that was really important for Jesus, as much as it was for Arsenal. As I say, special praise to him for that. Now, I said a couple of weeks ago on him that I wouldn't get rid of him in January, but that his time at Arsenal was up in the summer. And the reason I wouldn't get rid of him in January was because I felt he would have an important part to play in this season as a squad player, to come in and spot Havertz and offer something different. And that if we could unlock something in him again and get him not back to his best, I don't think that Gabriel Jesus will ever be back to his best, which is why we should move on. But getting back to a position where he can perform to some extent, then that will be really, really important. And I think last night's performance, well, I think that will be a really big help to him to get to that level that we not need him at. We want him at the Gabriel Jesus pre-World Cup, pre-injury, but the realistic level we can expect from him this season, because that's going to be fundamentally important. And also help provide some value potentially. If he can come in and get 10 to 12 goals this season, that might aid the value that we get for him when we do look to move him on in the summer. Because right now, I don't think there will be many suitors beyond Brazil where the money will be very, very low. If you can generate some suitors in Europe, that will really help. But I think the other thing that it showed last night, and I think this relates to another player, is Kai Havertz. It will put some pressure on him, which I think is good. I think that's what players at the top level need, is someone to come and put some pressure on them. But more importantly, I think it signals to Mikel Arteta that you need your number 9 playing more centrally and more in the box. Kai Havertz doesn't do that, and I think that's what he's being asked to do. I'm not criticising Kai Havertz for that. But when he stays more centrally, Arsenal can offer that goal threat. We're very good going down the sides, and it offers the cutback options. And we saw Raheem Sterling do that last night. We saw Kieran Tierney do that last night. We saw with Saka's goal that Jesus set up a couple of weeks ago that he can do that. So I think that was against Monaco. So I think that presence in the middle is really important. I think that should be one of the lessons Arteta takes from last night. So on Jesus, I think really good news. Really happy for him. It's been a difficult year for him. But I think it doesn't really change his future at the club. He will move on in the summer. Kieran Tierney was one of the other three players I wanted to talk about. a surprise start last night. I didn't expect him to start. I didn't expect to see him in an Arsenal shirt ever again. Which shows how wrong I can be sometimes. But hey, you've got to put yourself out there, and you're not always going to be right. Um, he played very well. Looked a threat. It's been 6 months since he last played, and I'm delighted to see him out on the pitch. He obviously tired and had to come off with what we think is cramp. But it emerged after the game that Arsenal would not be taking up the option to extend his contract beyond June. I don't think that comes as a surprise to anybody, and he will now leave. There are rumours today that Celtic will come in and try and make that a loan with a free signing in June. I think Arsenal can try and look for suitors in January. I think, given his lack of football and his injury history in the last few years, I don't think that likely. I think a loan is the best they can hope for, clear the wages, and then he will depart in June. There is a reasonable view that Kieran Tierney could stay. I'm not sure how keen he will be to do that. Um, but I think Arsenal will need to assess it before they make the decision to loan him out, which is what I think will happen in January. And that will have to be based on the fitness of players like Zinchenko, Calafiori, Timber. Not Timber, well, Timber, I suppose he's fit at the moment, but you never know with that ACL last year. But White and Tomiyasu, if there are likely to be ongoing injury issues there, Arsenal will have a decision to make on whether they need to keep Kieran Tierney around. But my gut feel is that this will be probably his last performance for Arsenal, or certainly last start for Arsenal, and he will depart in January. But lovely to see him play so well last night and back in an Arsenal shirt, because he's a very, very good player. It's just a shame what's happened to him in terms of injuries. And then as we slide down the ladder on performances last night, Jakub Kiwior had an absolute disaster. It's the worst performance I've seen from him in an Arsenal shirt. He makes that mistake 3 minutes in, and I don't think he ever recovered. I think that was playing on his mind all night. Now, on one extent, I can understand why that plays on his mind. On the other, you're a professional footballer. You've got to be able to overcome those moments. And you've got to be able to put them to one side, and he was unable to do that. I was talking with Gunnar Gathering last night on a live stream about that, and I just wondered whether it was a mental issue behind that mistake, where he's thinking about what his future in his side, he's almost trying too hard, or he's thinking about, is it time to move on? Now, you can't do that in the game. When you're on the game, you've got to be concentrating on it. But I just wonder how it's affected his preparation rather than in the game, and that's transferred to the game, because he wasn't physically outmuscled for that. He wasn't in the wrong position. He's misread the ball. Look, that can happen, but you just really looked like he was struggling just all round. And it's not an ability thing. I think he has the ability to be Arsenal's backup centre half. He's upgradable. I think it probably will signal the end of Jakub Kiwior. But again, like Tierney, Arsenal have got to... I think they would be foolish to move him on in January unless they have a replacement. We know the January market's hard. And if anyone's coming in January, I think it's got to be a forward rather than a defender. So for me, I think Arsenal have to find a way to pick up Jakub Kiwior, get him back concentrating game, get him back into the right place to be able to play in the side. But I think in the summer, he's again one that will move on. And that's probably right. I think he is upgradable, but that doesn't make him a terrible player by any means. But we need him here just for numbers, and he does have the ability until the end of the season, and then we look again. Which brings me on to incomes very quickly. I've spoken in the last couple of days weeks about Jonathan David and Umbermo and a couple of others about incomings, but we've been linked with Marcus Rashford, who has obviously given a public interview saying that he feels it's time for him to move on from Manchester United, essentially. And I think Ruben Amorim probably feels the same. And he's not going to be part of that plan there. He's been linked with us before, last couple of summers, as well as a few other clubs like Paris Saint-Germain. Would I take him? I certainly wouldn't be signing him on a permanent transfer. I think his fee would have dropped. I do. But he's got big wages. And I hesitate here because at his best, Marcus Rashford is very good. Capable of playing number 9, capable of playing on the left wing. He's fast, he's strong, he's got a good eye for goal. We've seen that, but he's equally inconsistent. He's had 5 seasons where he's got single-digit goals and 4 seasons where he's got double-digit goals, which just shows that sort of how he can fluctuate. Now, this side is better than Manchester United. Could that mean he scores more goals? I think that's probable. But I also look at the other side of his game and think, well, He's very similar to Martinelli in terms of the style of play. Do we necessarily need two players like that again when we play a lot of games against low block sides? Secondly, does he have that defensive side of the game? Gabriel Martinelli can be very frustrating going forward, unquestionably so, but there can be no complaints at all about his defensive work rate. And that is just simply missing from Marcus Rashford's game. We see him amble back, we see him not commit himself. Now, maybe Arteta can coach that out of him, but I'm not convinced that that's the case. And I'm not convinced that's what we should be looking to get at this way, is trying to coach things out of players. Yes, you should always be looking to improve players, but it's a fundamental, and I think it's an attitude rather than an ability thing. And then I think the other thing that concerns me about it would be his wages. He's on a reported £300,000 a week at Manchester United. He's never left Manchester. He's never played outside of Manchester. And you just wonder how the big nights of London, when he can be that sort of player that isn't always fully focused, by all accounts, on his game, might impact him negatively. So I think for me, when I put all that together, those risks outweigh the upside. So while I would take him as a loan, it wouldn't be my first choice, but I certainly wouldn't be looking to buy him on a permanent, because if I'm perfectly honest with you, the loan is fine in January because options are limited, but a permanent transfer, there are too many downsides, there are too many risks, and I just think given the outlay in terms of transfer fee and wages, there are better players, and Arsenal should be aiming higher than Marcus Rashford. So for me, it's a no. But let me know what you guys think about the future of any of those three players. If you disagree with anything I've said or agree, then please let me know in the comments. And big question is, would you take Marcus Rashford at Arsenal? I'll be back with a video at some point in the coming days, I'm sure. Until then, keep well, and I will speak to you soon. Have a good day. Bye.